The 2014 Ebola outbreak took Nigeria by surprise and brought with it confusion, deaths, and massive losses. The situation was, however, successfully contained by the joint efforts of both the public and private sectors. Since then, there have been reported cases of deaths from other infectious diseases like Lassa fever and cholera. To prevent these unnecessary deaths, guard against future epidemic and ensure better management of infectious diseases, a private-public alliance has been formed. What is the aim of this private-public alliance, and how do they intend to achieve their goals? These and more will be our focal points today on Panorama, coming to you from the Lagos Network Center. I'm Elizabeth Omori. Stay with us. The presidency has described the performance of the All Progressives Congress in the just concluded by-elections in 3 states as a good omen for the Buhari-Osinbajo ticket in the coming 2019 elections. At a joint press briefing, Senior Special Assistant to the President on Media and Publicity, Garba Shehu and Olaolu Akonde say the outcome of the elections was an indication of the belief and confidence the people of the country have in the Buhari's administration and the APC as the only party that can bring an end to corruption and poverty in the land. State House correspondent Jide Unifade reports.
The performance of the All Progressives Congress in the by-elections conducted in Bauchi, Katsina, Kogi, and Cross River states was described by Garba Shehu as fabulous. As he says, each of the election victories is epic in nature. He speaks of lessons to be taken from the victories that the party has been recording.
It's a clear statement by Nigerians that Nigerians have spoken that President Buhari maintains and retains his momentum. Nigerians, by this statement, are also saying that they no longer have time for politics of insult and diversion and the monkey they walk, baboon they chop politics of PDP.
It calls for the full cooperation of the National Assembly with the executive in order to deliver the dividend of democracy to the people of the country.
And I think that it is appropriate at this time then we appeal to the National Assembly to be on the same page with President Muhammadu Buhari administration.
Olaolu Akonde, Senior Special Assistant to the President in the Office of the Vice President, also comments on free interest loans to market women in the country.
Already, we have enumerated about 500,000 of such petty traders, and the way to do it is that there are enumeration agents that will be going to the major markets across the country. We are starting with Lagos, Kano, and Abuja.
While thanking the media on the various roles played, the senior special assistants appealed for more concentration on positive aspects of elections rather than the negative aspects. In the State House, Jide Onifade, NTA News.
Meanwhile, the All Progressives Congress, APC in Gombe State, has continued with its mobilization in support of President Muhammadu Buhari as it braces up to take over from the PDP in that state. A crowd of supporters gathered during the inauguration of the joint campaign office for the president, and one of the governorship aspirants in the state, Zara Umar Adamu, has details.
An unprecedented crowd of APC supporters defied the heavy downpour to celebrate the commissioning of the Inouye Buhari campaign office, reiterating their unflinching support to the party in the coming elections. The two-time governorship candidate, under the platform of the then CPC and APC, Inouye also donated 15 Peugeot 406 cars and 114 motorcycles to the party. He explained that the exemplary leadership of the APC, especially at the national level, is enough for President Buhari to win the heart of every well-meaning Nigerian.
In Gombe State, 100% of the people are solidly behind the APC.
Inouye, who took a rally around the state capital to solicit support for Buhari and APC, urged aspiring APC members to remain united before and after all primaries. Zara Umar Adam, NTA News.
Nigerian women have been urged to contest for elective political offices in order to bring the dividends of democracy closer to the people. The Minister of Women Affairs and Social Development, Senator Aisha Al-Hassan, made the call at an annual women's conference in Lagos. Nosa Ursula reports.
4 days, delegates at the annual event, which assembled stakeholders in the sector, had been sharing knowledge and experiences with the aim of proffering solutions to some of the issues adversely affecting women and girls in the country. The minister outlined some of the federal government's programs aimed at improving the lot of women and girls, including the National Women Empowerment Fund, Conditional Cash Transfer, Government Enterprise and Economic Program, said plans were on the way to reach more women at the grassroots.
Interventions on food and security, economic growth, and human capital development can only yield positive and sustainable results when the essential building blocks like peace and security are put in place.
Lagos State Governor Akinwumi Ambode, who was represented by the Secretary to the State Government, Tunji Bello, urged women to take a common stand against sexual and gender-based violence by canvassing a review of relevant laws to provide stiffer punishment for offenders given the serious threat the act poses to the safety and security of women and girls.
We believe that empowering the informal sector, in which women constitute the majority, will facilitate the process of socio-economic inclusion.
Lagos State Commissioner for Women Affairs and Poverty Alleviation, Lola Akonde, who was represented by the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry, Abiola Liadi, noted that the various technical sessions held by delegates had generated many ideas and perspectives to women and social development. In Lagos, Nosa Ursula, NTA News.
The federal government, through its Information and Culture Ministry, has an agreement on protocol of implementation on education and cultural cooperations with China. The Nigerian delegation was led by the Permanent Secretary in the ministry, who stood in for the Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed. Anthony Forson reports.
Yes.
Leading the Form 1 delegation, Permanent Secretary, Federal Ministry of Information and Culture, Deaconess Grace Isugepi, met with officials of the Chinese Ministry of Culture and Tourism. The Chinese Deputy Minister, Lin Jingzhu, discussed areas of strengthening bilateral cooperation between both countries. The meeting was followed by the signing of the protocol.
Thank you. Congratulations. How are you doing?
Still in Beijing, China, the minister's delegation made an official visit to the corporate headquarters of Star Times, where the delegation had an interactive session with the chairman of Star Times, Xin Zingpang. Among the issues that were discussed included the 10,000 satellite television villages, capacity building for Nigeria, among others. Members of the delegation have since returned to Nigeria. Anthony Forson, NTA News.
Wife of the President, Aisha Muhammad Buhari, has been conferred with an honorary degree in public administration by Sunmun University of Alsan-Si in the Republic of Korea. State House correspondent Ali Kabir has details.
At the entrance of the administrative building of Sunmun University, lined up the school dorms headed by the president, Professor Sunjo Huang, who received the wife of the president and ushered her inside for the commencement of the program. Mrs. Buhari was given a rousy welcome while she was introduced by the dean of the graduate school, Professor Min Sujiang, who later read her recitation. While decorating her, the president of the school described the activities and the achievement of Future Assured program as unprecedented in transforming the lives of vulnerable people.
This is the first time a Nigerian is being conferred with an honorary doctorate degree by Sunmun University, and the officials of the university confirmed that the humanitarian activities of the wife of the president, especially in improving the lives of women and children, deserves the honor, and they urged her to sustain the tempo, especially in promoting global peace and development.
Her Excellency has made great efforts to improve the health and welfare of women and children through the Future Assured program. And she has contributed to the development of human rights and education for women and children.
Dr. Aisha Buhari explained that to whom much is given, much is expected. As such, the award will serve as a morale booster in changing the lives of women and children, hoping that the gesture will open more windows of opportunities in strengthening the bilateral relations between Nigeria and the Republic of Korea, especially in the field of education.
On my part, let me assure you that this honor will serve as a motivation to broaden my humanitarian activities and also to encourage women and young generation to imbibe the culture of rendering assistance to the needy. At this note, I wish to acknowledge the support and contribution of all those that made it possible for my achievements that resulted to this recognition.
Mrs. Buhari was conducted around the school prominent sites such as library and museum to get familiar with the school premises. In Asansi, Republic of Korea, Aliu Kabir, NTA News.
A multi-sectoral partnership-tagged Alliance for Epidemic Preparedness and Response has been launched in Lagos by the Minister of Health, Isaac Adewale. The project, a collaboration between Private Sector Alliance of Nigeria and Nigerian Center for Disease Control, is aimed at enhancing Nigeria's ability to prevent, detect, respond, and control disease outbreak. Joy Ken Abakboya has details.
The 2014 Ebola outbreak, the response and the role of both the public and private organizations in containing the epidemic brought to the fore the importance of partnership, especially in the health sector. The Alliance for Epidemic Preparedness and Response project is an opportunity for government to involve the private sector in preventing and managing disease outbreaks.
The Alliance is of strategic importance to us for quite a number of reasons. We want to really benefit from the efficiency, the result-oriented approach of the private sector and the resources available in the private sector. We know government can't do it alone, so partnering with them will really help us to make this country safe.
Engagement between the private and public sector on how to prepare ourselves, what they will bring. You know, the public sector has a lot of resources. They also have management skills. They have financial management skills. They have all sorts of capabilities with supply chain management. Those are the assets they can bring on board for us to go to achieve the objectives of protecting Nigerians.
What we're saying here is that there must be a structure in place that involves everybody, because the private sector has the full resources in different aspects of what we need, and if they can jointly partner with the public sector, I think the system will be better for it.
Director General, Nigerian Center for Disease Control, NCDC, Dr. Chikwe Ihekweazu, says over 4 billion naira is expected to be raised by the partnership to improve infrastructure, direct response, and emergency stockpile in the nation's disease control sector.
This is not a responsibility that can be left for public sector parastatal alone. It's really something that we have to collectively come together. And we know we can do it because we saw it happen during the Ebola outbreak, but we want to do it in a more proactive way, in a more strategic way. So today we brought together the big players in the private sector together with the public sector to show that we can work together and really leverage on the resources, capacities, and resources that we have, both in public and private. That requires building confidence, providing governance, showing that we can trust each other.
Panelists at the forum lauded the initiative, which they say, if sustained, will reduce the burden of infectious diseases and epidemics. In Lagos, Joy Ken Abakboya, NTA News.
To speak further on this initiative, I have with me in the studio a public health practitioner, Dr. Muntaka Umar Sadiq. It's nice to have you in our studio.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, what prompted this initiative, Alliance for Epidemic Preparedness and Response? What is the aim?
Sure, so we have a very complex healthcare system in Nigeria that is dealing with both supply and demand side challenges.
Okay.
But our health system is vulnerable to the threats of future epidemics and outbreaks.
Okay.
Now, we have learned from the lessons of the Ebola outbreak in 2014, which really speaks to the importance of partnerships, both at the federal and state level, but more importantly, between the public and private sector. I think we saw in that era how the private sector was able to offer its capabilities, resources, and expertise to support government in containing that epidemic. So what we want to do now is, rather than being reactionary, if you like, what this alliance seeks to do really is to create that structured, deliberate, more coordinated platform where we can pool private sector resources, expertise, and capabilities and support the NCDC and government in being better prepared in terms of detection, prevention, and response to future threats and epidemics.
Okay, so what is the private sector bringing to the table considering this collaboration?
So I think the private sector, as we know, has assets and capabilities that it can offer the health system, right? And by that I mean a number of things. On the one hand, the private sector has supply chain capabilities that can help in terms of storage or the transportation of emergency materials. But also, the private sector has innovation and technology that can help to strengthen surveillance systems. In addition to that, we know that the private sector has wide reach, right? So the footprint of the private sector is such that we can leverage not just the workforce, equipment, and personnel to respond more nimbly to emergency situations. And as a final point, the private sector can really harness innovative financing to create better breakthroughs in terms of health security. But as part of this sort of alliance, what we want is a more coordinated private sector that is able to pool all the different capabilities that can help to strengthen preparedness and response so that future threats of things like Ebola and Lassa fever are contained in a timely manner. So what we're trying to do now is to prepare and prime the private sector in advance,
okay,
so that we understand the priorities and who can do what, so that unlike the last time when things were relatively last minute, we want to be pre-coordinated and have pre-commitments, okay, such that we're able to act more rapidly and save the lives of Nigerians.
Okay, so are there lessons learned from the previous disease outbreaks?
So I think there are a number of lessons. I think on the one hand, we were lucky that the index case came to capital cities like Lagos, okay, and Port Harcourt that had more resilient health systems to potentially control the epidemic, right? But in terms of lessons, I think the importance of leadership, right? So the role of government, but partnerships on a number of levels in terms of the role of the private sector was quite key. And I think another important lesson is in terms of communication. I think we saw how communication and community engagement, right, was quite heightened. So the information or asymmetry of information was minimized during that era, right? So we needed to create that enlightenment, right? There were lots of fake news at the time that needed to be shattered. So the importance of communication and community engagement, importance of public-private partnership, importance of teamwork between the federal and state governments, I think were important enablers in controlling the epidemic at that time.
At that time. Okay, according to the NDC boss, 4 billion naira is needed to drive this initiative. So what are these areas of investments?
Sure, I think to start with, this alliance for epidemics and response in Nigeria is a partnership between the NCDC, the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, and the Private Sector Health Alliance. And I think we have reached an inflection point where the government has laid out the business case for the private sector to get involved.
Okay.
Now, they have put together a business case that highlights the priorities in terms of where the system gaps currently are to better prepare and contain a future epidemic. There are 6. I'll just run through a number of them.
Okay.
The first is really around infrastructure and equipment, right? So it's things like your mobile labs, right? Infrastructure around an emergency operations center, which was critical in the last epidemic in terms of identifying, detecting, and tracing transmissions. Okay. So that is one of the biggest pieces. The second is really around logistics, right? Meaning the storage, right, but also the transportation of personnel and reagents and supplies required. This is indeed an area that the private sector can potentially support. But things around capacity, technology for surveillance are all important areas that the private sector can support government in achieving its health security goals.
All right, before you go, what are your expectations from your partners?
I think for us, we would like to call on more private sector companies to join this alliance and offer not just resources, but some of their capabilities around supply chains, equipment, data, communication infrastructure that can support the Nigerian government in achieving some of its health security agendas. For us, that's what success looks like.
All right, Dr. Muntaka Umar Sadiq, thank you so much for your time. This is the much I can take from you.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much. You're still watching News Panorama, coming to you from the Lagos Network Center. More reports ahead. Stay with us.
Slavery is an evil practice abolished all over the world over 200 years ago. But today, human traffickers are selling human beings as slaves in Africa. It is your responsibility to make sure that you and the people you know do not fall into slavery. Don't believe fake promises of jobs abroad.
People went to say Libya, Italy no use you when they carry me on top water. 4 days now they lock me for inside house, no food, no water. I nearly die. Now God, when me heaven and earth, now save me. If you get 1 naira for Nigeria, you get junior 1, you say you no get papa, you no get mama, now make you come out. I beg go they do farm work. You better pass person when enter road.
Don't accept to travel to Europe through the Sahara Desert. You may be walking into slavery. Don't be a slave.
This is a public service announcement brought to you by NTA.
Thanks for staying with us. Some indigent women and widows of military personnel who died in active service are among 1,000 beneficiaries of an ongoing skills acquisition training organized by the Barrack Youths Foundation at Army Cantonment, Ikeja, Lagos. Jane Ojukwu reports that the beneficiaries exhibited their products from the training program organized to mark the 10th year of the foundation.
Ibukun Adeyemo is a widow with 4 children. Having lost her husband in 2015 to the fight against Boko Haram insurgency, she says life has not been easy, especially catering for the kids without any means of livelihood. Ibukun is among the women undertaking the 6-week skill acquisition training.
As I don't get work now, I can use something manage with my children to feed my children now.
Like Ibukun, other indigent women and youths at the cantonment are benefiting from the program, which features training on 12 skills, including cake baking, bead making, hairdressing, fashion designing, and soap making.
I'm opportunity to meet my own course advisor who has given us ground roots on how to make your cakes.
Special guests at the event and wife of Chief of Staff, 82 Division Enugu, Elise Nwosu, urged the participants to take advantage of the economic empowerment for financial independence.
It's something good. It will go a very long way to at least reduce some of the sufferings in the community.
You have to be sincere at what you are doing because people look at how good that thing is. That's what will make people to start coming to you.
For those who can do catering, they'll be given the contract to cook. For those who can bake, they can also bake cakes when they are events. For those who can do shoe, they can also patronize them. For those who can sew clothes. So we are coming back to these women that have been empowered with skills, and this will continue. But right now, what we need mostly is the equipment to empower more of these women, because as day and year goes by, some of this equipment we have are becoming obsolete. So we are calling for support that we can get the very best and make sure that this family continue to get the best, especially the widows.
The Barrack Youth Foundation was inaugurated 10 years ago by the late former President Musa Yar'Adua. The training is expected to wind up at the end of this month. In Lagos, Jane Ojukwu, NTA News.
Up next is Sports Update with Kene Imagbudike.